Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me on 10 Minute Tuesday. This is episode 23, and I got my guy Paul McNeil, PhD, put some respect on his name, in here. Paul, what's up, my man?
Hey, what's going on? Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so it's 10 Minute Tuesdays, episode 23. You know what it is. So, Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Paul McNeil, PhD, or Dr. Paul McNeil, and I work at my company, NB Usable Security, where we focus on helping businesses create these amazing marketing and branding engagements for their company to increase repeat customer sales using emerging technologies like AI, chatbots, augmented reality, stuff like that.
So you're not busy at all with all the
Not
new
at
stuff
all.
that's coming out. So understanding you got your business now, but at some point you had to get a start. So really, what compels you to get into data to begin with?
So my undergrad degree was in math, to be honest with you. So I would say I've always kind of leaned towards math and computer science. So data has always been a pretty big part. But I would say that probably grad school um, was where I really started to lean into what data could really do. You know, as an undergrad, you're doing a lot of projects, but you're not taking it too seriously. But once I got to grad school, I had to really look at like statistical analysis of things. How are we collecting survey analysis, that kind of stuff. And so I would say school was my initial um, introduction to data.
Wow, and it's crazy because like I've seen it paths when I talk to some of these people where they started in school and it stuck
Yeah.
with them, but then I've seen people where like they just roundabout way just got into it, and then I've seen people
Yeah,
who like started with it in school and it's like, yeah, I don't like this at all, but then somehow they came back to it. It just wasn't for them at that moment.
for sure.
So that's crazy. All right. So understanding, your own business, boss, doing everything great. But at a certain point, you had jobs that you did not like. So, what's been your least favorite job to date?
My least favorite job was an internship between NASA and Lockheed Martin the summer after my freshman year of college. And I worked in a warehouse making computer deliveries and refreshes to the Oregon Huntsville. And it was my least favorite job because of the heat. So I don't know if you've been to the Huntsville, Alabama area in the summertime, but we're talking about 100 and something degrees. Each workstation we're delivering is 75 pounds. We've got this like gurney of like six or seven of them, and we're walking across the base, and there's no shade on this base. So that would by far be the worst job that I had.
I ain't gonna lie, man. That sounds miserable because it gets hot down there. Like no shade at all, too. So that's
Yeah,
insane.
not at all.
All right, so you've gone from internship to, like I said, having your own business, but you had your own journey to get there. So, what has been your biggest failure? Quotation marks around failure because we fell forward. But what's been your
Right.
biggest failure, and what did you learn from that experience?
So I would say I have a personal fail that I feel, and then I could do the career fail. So the personal fail would be not prioritizing relationships enough as I was progressing through my career. And so when you look back on it, you're just like, man, there are all these really dope people um, that I did kind of know, but didn't focus on nurturing those relationships because I felt like, this is how driven I'm trying to be or whatever the case is. And so now you look up and you're just like, man, I could have way more friends or have like a much more, fulfilling social life in that aspect. So for me, I feel like that's a fail. And the lessons I've learned from that is to just appreciate the people in your life and make time to nurture relationships. Relationships take just as much work as your career. So I would say that that would be the personal. And then from a professional standpoint, uh, one of my biggest fails was the first startup that I created, which definitely flamed out and failed. On paper, everything was great, but we weren't able to kind of pull it together. And what I learned there is that you have to understand um, uh, the different team dynamics. Not everybody is a startup person. Just because you can do the work that's needed, not everybody can do well with that environment. And understanding that there are startup people, there are small biz people, there are corporate people, there's a mix, but you have to understand that in order for that team to work.
Wow, that's like incredible lessons. Twofold, like especially on a personal one. Like I think we're similar in that regard, where like we can put our head down, and
Yeah,
nothing's going to stop me from that goal or whatever that thing is that I'm going to achieve. And it's like if you're not mindful of it, like so much time or so much relationships or people or connections or whatever, they just kind of like drift off. But I do think some of that, like from my experience, I do think some of that is definitely divine oriented and God oriented, where like the right people are supposed to be around me at the right time.
for sure.
But there was a moment where I was a little bit like difficult and hard on myself in that regard. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And then the startup piece is really fascinating. Like I think a follow up question to that for me personally, like when did you know that it was time to like chalk it up and kind of move on to the next thing?
Yeah, there was no money.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was twofold. I think part of it was just having that support of that team. It wasn't working and put a lot of our resources. So runway was kind of gone. It wasn't working. Um, and also we were facing a lot of like education issues, and so it was like people weren't really. We were fixing a problem that I think the timing was just off. Like I think it would have been a better time to put it out maybe like during the pandemic or something like that a few years later. But we were trying to do some like really cutting edge stuff, but we weren't solving a problem that people felt was a real pain point. And so, it makes it much, much harder. And unless you already have a lot of funding to just wait until it becomes a bigger pain point. You just have to kind of like call it. And so that's what we did. And then I discovered marketing, data, marketing analytics, and kind of the interdisciplinary work that I do now. And I was more passionate about this than I was the original idea. And so we just kind of rolled out with it.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, I mean, it's about the money, right?
Yeah.
The money has to roll in.
For sure.
And I think to piggyback off of another point, like my wife taught me this lesson. You mentioned it earlier. Like sometimes there's corporate people, there's startup people, there small biz, and I think identifying that. I struggled with that like early on in
Yeah.
my career because like again, same fire, same drive, same passion. I was like, why don't you have this? Like
Yeah.
because it just came so natural to me. So
Yeah.
that's fascinating to hear you say that.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So, what is one piece of advice that you would give someone who's just starting out in their career?
Piece of advice. Just starting out in their career. In college or right out of college?
Uh, two part.
Okay. So if you're in college, uh, important piece of advice is if you have something that you kind of think you're interested in, whether it is a startup idea or just a field, leverage the resources at your university, leverage your homework assignments. Whenever you have an open-ended project, figure out how you can make that open-ended project a part of whatever your big idea is. So, for instance, if I have an app idea and I am a computer science major, then when I take my database class, my final project should be the database for my app idea. When I go then and learn to do my front end class, I should be building out really great front end stuff so that as you go through these different projects, you end up with either a really solid portfolio of real use cases, um, or you end up with your final app, and then you can leverage your university resources, um, to make that the most successful thing possible. Like if you're in data or something like that, you're learning these various tools, you have ideas, you're seeing problems, get involved in those problems, and then you can go to your professor and say like, yeah, we did this over here, but here's this real world thing that I'm doing. Do you know anyone that I could get an internship with where I can build on this other thing? By taking that initiative and making sure you have very practical projects, and doubling piggybacking on your homework, that's gonna save you a lot of time, so you don't have to graduate and then spend all summer making your portfolio or being told you have no experience. Uh, After college, if you're just kind of starting out or you're transitioning, then one of the things that I would suggest that you do is whatever it is you're interested in, if you can find a nonprofit that would benefit from whatever it is you're trying to do, I would try to take that and volunteer to do that there. That way, you have a real use case, you have real users, you have real data, whatever, all of those things. Your portfolio is going to look so much better to everybody. if you have real world data and real world issues. And so you can go to a nonprofit that you really believe in and say, look, I want to donate $50,000 worth of data analytics to help you solve this problem or do this free of charge. I just want to get involved and be able to say that I did something. You can do the prompts, you can simulate data on things like Mockaroo and stuff like that. But if you're really just trying to get your foot in the door, having that real world data, having a company that they can call and be like, did this person really do this for you? That's gonna take you the farthest, I think. And you
Wow.
build your network in the process.
Yeah. That's you're the first person to mention nonprofit in that way to me. Like I've actually never thought of that and using that, but that makes total sense, right? There's real world, real examples, real
Yeah.
connections, real referrals based on real work. Wow, that's amazing. That's definitely going to be the clip that I post on
Hey, I
social
love it.
media.
I love it.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So tell me about the most influential people in your life and then how they made an impact on you.
Sure. Man, there's so many. So definitely my parents. And I know a lot of people say that just to say it, but I was homeschooled from fifth grade until I went to college. So my parents were really very influential in my life, like very literally influential for the early part and that drive uh, being able to be self-taught, self-driven to learn. A lot of that I got from my parents, and also from being at home. I would then say I had a professor in graduate school, Dr. Roth. I would say that he really shaped the way that I approach coding and also a friend, Electa. She was in grad school with me as well. She really helped me out, and they kind of made that foundation. And then finally, my doctoral advisor, Dr. Shetty. The reason I really got into machine learning when I did 2011, 2012 was because, or 2013, 2014. Sorry, wrong years. Um, but the reason I really got into that was because when I got into his lab, he was like, I don't care what your project is, there's going to be a simulation component, there's going to be machine learning. So you make whatever you want to figure it out as it relates to cybersecurity or whatever, but understand that we do machine learning in here. And so that made me really think about machine learning, but it also made me think about interdisciplinary solutions to problems, which I've literally built my business around.
Wow, that's incredible. Those all are definitely influential and great people. And just the fact that your professor was like, "Hey, yeah, that's cool, but in here,
Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
what we do." So that's absolutely incredible. And then parents, I mean, like key influencers, like yeah, like you said, it's cliche, but it's real, right?
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
they mold you and help you out and let you free, and figure it out from there because all the time they put into you. So that's awesome. All right, Paul, this was great. Where can listeners find you at online?
Sure. So definitely on LinkedIn. You can look, I think if you search my name, Paul McNeil, comma PhD. There are a lot of Paul McNeils apparently, but if you put comma PhD, I pop up. And then on Instagram and Twitter, I am at usable sec guy, SECGUY at usable sec guy. And you can feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Great, great, great. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for taking time out of your day. This was amazing. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for
And
having me.
yeah, no problem. And everybody, if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you all next week. Y'all have a great day.